Parsha Shoftim, actually, Shoftim means judges, but it's more than just municipal style judges. It means that it's a system of justice that is implied here. Now, Moses instructs the people of Israel to appoint judges, law enforcement officers in every city, and we see this phrase, "Justice, justice shall you pursue." He commands them and and gives them instructions on how to administer justice without corruption and favoritism. A very important element of any society. And in every generation, Moses says that he's entrusted the task of the Israelite people to not only have the Torah and to preserve the Torah, but to also interpret the Torah, to have the Torah available and understood in its form through its judges. Its judges became sort of the Sanhedrin, sort of becomes like the Supreme Court that interprets the text and makes sure that the text is followed. Now, according to the law that they were to be taught, they were also to instruct the people according to those laws. Shoftim includes the prohibition of idolatry, sorcery, laws governing the appointment of kings, and guidelines for creation, the cities of refuge, which are an incredible concept that we can talk about if you'd like. It sets forth rules of war, the what we call the laws of land warfare. The concepts of home and of a man who is going to be deployed or could be called up. Is he married? Is he soft-hearted, afraid of what's going on? I mean, all the ways to deal with all the sociological issues is really found in this text. There is this prohibition against wanton destruction of something valuable or a value exemplified in the law forbids the cutting down of fruit trees, for example. After, in a combat and war environment, to make sure that you take care of the environment and the plants and the food that would help sustain a culture. Now, this parsha concludes with the law of special procedures when a person is killed by an unknown murderer and his body's found in the field. I think Sandy mentioned that just the other day in a class about the cow that is, the bull that is brought in, struck at the back of the neck and its head, cut, its nerves cut off, and it's killed in the field. And this idea of remembering and honoring the death of a person, that Israelites don't take kindly to the idea of someone dying without some kind of responsibility being taken. So if we remember in this class today, we're going to be focused on justice, leadership, morality, and accountability. The reason why it's important for us to cover this as a community of people of the Abrahamic faith is that we believe that these are core values. They're not Jewish values. They're not Christian values. They're universal values that are the values that help demonstrate the very essence of Hashem himself. We understand God through understanding the Torah. And when we understand justice, we begin to comprehend the full justice of God, both the mercy, the loving kindness, and also the swiftness of justice and the surety of justice. This concept of leadership that we would examine in the text and throughout all the Torah, we understand that Hashem gives us the guidance of what a leader should be. They should be someone of great moral interpretitude, someone who's not given to bribery, someone who can't be bribed. People learn through the Torah about accountability. These are universal ideas. So let's take just a moment and first look at the concept found in Deuteronomy 16, verse 20. And it says, "Justice, justice shall you pursue." Now, we all know that when we see a double word used like this in a text, there is a strong attention to detail in this. Now, generally, when we see a double word like this, it is nailing down this idea that there's an urgency and consistency that needs to be applied and fairness in justice. Whether that means justice to prove a person innocent or justice to prove a person guilty. One of the problems that we have, or I know that I have had in my life, when I hear the word justice, immediately that comes to mind is, retribution, damages, payment, punishment, imprisonment. That's justice. But there's the converse side of justice, which is mercy. Just recently, I don't know if you guys ever watched the judge from Rhode Island that just died of cancer. Are you guys familiar? Italian, son of Italian immigrant. He had a show called I can't remember. It's something about something in Rhode Island, but he was a municipal court judge. And he tells a story that, he came from poverty. It's Italian immigrants, and his dad, delivered milk to people to make ends meet. And he became an attorney and then decided to go into law. And his dad sat in court the first day that he was in court, and he made a judgment to a guy and gave him a strict fine. And the guy left, and he was an elderly man, and his dad said, he asked his dad, how did you think I did? And his dad said, sometimes justice doesn't have to be that cruel, that justice can be sweet and beautiful. And from that moment on, he said it changed his life. And if you'll watch his videos, you can see them on YouTube. He'll have people come before him that have clearly violated the law, but the way he deals with them is it's incredible. I mean, just absolutely incredible and refreshing, because we actually see this idea that is taught within the Torah that the nations need to establish just courts. And this man most definitely exhibited the highest value of justice and loving kindness in a court. I just recently saw a video of a very elderly man in his late 90s. He had gotten a ticket for, I don't know, running a stop sign, whatever it was. And the judge says, "Where were you going in such a hurry? Why were you distracted? What happened?" And he says, "I was taking my son." The 90-something-year-old man was taking his son to get blood work. And he goes, "Oh, so you still take care of your son?" He says, "Yes, my son is 65 years old, and he's handicapped, mentally handicapped, and he has sickness, and I have to go take him to get his treatment." And the judge immediately said, "I understand that. You're taking care of your 65-year-old son. What a great commitment that you have. You realize that you did break the law." And he said, "Yes, I did, Your Honor. But I didn't know that, whatever." He gave his circumstances, and the judge dismissed the case. Interesting. Why? Because justice is absolutely important. Justice is important for the nations. And it seems to me that we are living during a time right now that we're seeing a shift in society, that people are demanding justice and integrity in our leadership. They are demanding our society is demanding that those who are put in leadership positions are held accountable. And we should do that. This idea of this application of justice in a society that is not impartial, that's not corrupt, that can't be paid off, and a very important moral lesson that is taught. Here's the other thing, is that this requirement to employ not only judges, but law enforcement, or people that enforce the law. This is very much parallels our modern law system. We have societies that tend to be a bit more on the liberal side, that has acquiesced or winked at certain levels of crime for the longest time and seen the effect of it, have not had justice applied properly. You can be a merciful, kind society, but yet exhibit strong decision and decisiveness when it comes to adherence to laws. So how does it speak to us? Is that people of the nations need to really begin to demand that we have justice. My wife and I received what do you call it? Summons for courts. What do you call it for jury duty? Yeah, I saw you do the lips. Jury duty. And we first time in our entire life got it both on the same day, which is fantastic. I wish they could do that more often. But the problem is my wife comes into the room and says, "How is it that you and I get these things about every year and a half? When I know people that have spent their entire life never got one jury summons. How does that happen that we get it all the time?" And I said, "I don't know. Maybe we're so special that they need us in court." But I mean, it was a joke. But the point is your jury summons come, and it is just something you don't like to do. I don't like going sitting there and waiting, and it's something that needs to be done, and somebody might depend on you going there and doing that. And it's a very important part. Let's look at this idea of leadership and integrity found in the 17th chapter, verse 14 through 20. The 17th chapter, verse 14, starts off by saying, let me let James in the room. Verse 14 says, "If after you've entered the land that your God has assigned to you and taken possession of it and settled it, you decide, I will set a king over me, as do all the nations about me, and you shall be free to set a king over yourself, one chosen by your God. Be sure to set as a king for yourself one who is your own people. You must not set a foreigner over you, one who is not your kin, not as part of the tribe. Moreover, you shall not keep many horses," talking about the king, "or send people back to Egypt to add to his horses. And since God has warned you, you must not go back that way." You've got to make sure you have a king that stays strong about guiding the people of Israel. Next, in verse 17, it says, "And he shall not have many wives, lest his heart go astray, nor shall amass silver and gold to excess." We're going to read this, and while all of us are reading this, are reminding ourselves of someone who is a great wise sage, Solomon, who actually did all the things that he wasn't supposed to do, and we could get into a discussion of that later on if it's that germane to you. So the whole idea is the Torah limits a king's power, no excessive wealth, horses, wives, and he must write a Torah. He must read the Torah. This idea of writing the Torah was to make sure that the Torah stays as the central focus for the king himself. And clearly, sometime in the future, after the king is established, we see that they forget that there's a Torah. They lost it. They lose it in antiquity somehow. The lesson here is that leaders serve. They're supposed to be servants, not rulers. They are not above the law, and accountability is crucial. Societies have allowed leadership to live above the law, to hold everyone accountable to the law except for them. And as the righteous of the nations, we must realize that we deserve to have leaders that are servant leaders in our society, that are held accountable, and that we make sure that we hold them accountable, either by voting them out or having a way for investigations to be done. This idea that a nation really does flourish when leaders are humble and disciplined and are guided by higher principles rather than their ego or power. There are modern checks and balances in Western society, thank God, that allows us to sort of keep this Torah vision. But as I have mentioned, the people of the nations have to demand this and have to continue to insist that we follow after these core values that are taught within the Torah. Now, there are things that are discussed in the 18th chapter, verse 9 through 22, talking about prophecy and the person that speaks to you and the person that declares, come and follow me, I will show you who God is. This idea that there are true prophets as well as false prophets in the world, and that having discernment and distinction, the ability to distinct between what is true and false is very important. This idea is that people must seek voices of truth and avoid deception. One of the scary things about our postmodern society is the statistics that show how many hours people spend on social media and just scrolling on their phones or yeah, generally on their phones. And it almost seems as if as a society, we're being primed to be programmed, to have our brain remolded into some other concept, to maybe be propagandized, if that's the way to say it, to convince people that life or things are one way when they are really not that way. That is why I love the advice I heard from many different sources who have said when you wake up in the morning, make sure that you take the first hour and introduce into your mind and into your soul those things that are positive and affirming and that are that approach a higher level of goodness in your life. Because if you get immediate thing is you get on your phone and you start scrolling, you start seeing all the debates and this guy did this and this guy said that and this guy needs to go to jail for this and this person did this and all the crime and the shootings and the murders. That's why we don't even, most of us, I think in this group, don't even turn on the TV to watch the news anymore because of that. Why? Because it doesn't do anything more than lower our frequency. It lowers our level of spiritual connection. It puts sort of an extra clipote, an extra skin that doesn't allow us to really begin to live at the highest level. So we need to be people who love the truth more than anything. Societies are shaped by the voices that they listen to. And they're shaped by the voices that they trust. Unfortunately, many societies have fallen because they have listened and trusted in voices that lie to them and shape them in other ways. The need for truth and ethics and vision is absolutely a timeless commodity that every society needs to follow after. And these are the things that God was speaking of in this text. Next, Deuteronomy 19 talks about the laws of warfare, the balance between justice and mercy and protecting the innocent, even in times of crisis. There were laws of warfare. Israel has those same laws. When I hear that Israel is committing genocide, for example, it's sickening because I realize that they use the same principles of land warfare as this country in the United States. And I find it repulsive that someone would say that they are committing genocide when clearly they're not. And it just bothers me when I understand that they're governed by a higher level. So this idea is that nations have got to value not only strength and determination to be able to go to war, but also to be able to know what justice is and to understand the value of taking care of society around you. So let's look at the cities of refuge. The cities of refuge were set up what for? For unintentional murder, meaning someone who killed another person unintentionally. It wasn't out of a malice. That person had the opportunity to go to a city of refuge and save themselves. They would keep themselves from being killed or murdered. And as long as the Kohen Gadol lived, that person was safe to stay in that city and live in that city without being molested, but they had to stay in the city. They couldn't leave. They had to stay there. In conclusion, Shoftim Shotim's core about the structure of holiness in a society, the structure of justice in a society, humility and leadership, discernment, and voices that are around the value of life is not just a Jewish idea, an Israeli idea. It is a universal idea that every one of us can follow. We, however, need to live our lives with these principles as core elements as of our ethos, of our character that we're guided by, and also insist that people around us do the very same thing. That concludes the introduction to Deuteronomy and the discussion. Let's start right now.